Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Personal Branding Podcast with me, Ash Borland. And today we have an extra special guest for you. He is the founder of the personal branding agency called Brandly. His team help some of the top founders and executives in the UK and the US build profitable personal brands, which is what we're all about here, building sustainable and profitable personal brand businesses. That's his intro. Now I'm going to give you what my intro is. This guy is an absolute legend. And I had him on the show once before. I was just talking to him off air. And I said, the one thing I didn't like about him being on the show was that he made me look like an absolute amateur in the way that he described personal branding. He's in the green room now laughing. I can see him doing it. You can hear him. He's an absolute legend. We've got the amazing Sam Winsbury. Let me run the intro. Let's bring him on. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hey, Ash. Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for that warm introduction. I love the clip as well. That was awesome.
Oh, good. Yeah, I did it on my mobile phone. So that one is, I made it on my mobile while I was sat looking after my son.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, mate. Like I said, it's really true that you are just a living legend at this stuff. You really do know your stuff. And one thing I watched back, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to set a goal here that when I watch back, first of all, I'm going to talk only a tiny amount because last time I talked a lot, and I realized how much value you had. So we're going to not talk very much. We're going to let you take the stage, and I'm just going to ask you small bite-sized questions and let you just do your magic. If that sounds good to you,
mate, that's perfect. Let's get into it.
All right, Sam. So before we start and before we dive into the real deep questions, give me and my audience, my listeners, a backstory as to who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Yeah, so as you kind of mentioned in the intro, I run Brandly, which is a personal branding agency. We essentially build and manage personal brands for executives, directors, founders, kind of on their behalf, which I started August of 2020, so middle of the pandemic. I just graduated from university where I'd studied psychology and done a lot of marketing kind of outside of that. Doing a few freelance projects was kind of how I got into it. Was posting on my LinkedIn to kind of build up a profile around marketing, and eventually had people reaching out for help around their own profile and their own personal brands. So that's how I kind of got into the space, did a bit of consulting whilst I was at university, and then obviously launched the agency as a fresh graduate, if you like. And here we are, 8-9 months later.
And how's it going? Going well?
Yeah, mate, it's been amazing. The first kind of 6 months were absolute carnage. Good carnage, obviously, as a lot of businesses are. It was great, and now we're building out a team. We've got a few people that we're looking to bring on over the summer as well. So it's fantastic.
Oh, man, it's really lovely to see. It's lovely to hear as well, because as you know, and I've spoken to you about this before off air and through our kind of mutual connections, this is an emerging industry. It's a new industry, this personal branding space. And it's so nice to see that you're not alone in it. That's what I love about talking and working alongside people like you, like Joe, like all of these people I have on the show who are like consultants in the space, not just, and that's always going to dive, we said off air, we're going to dive into strategy today, because I think it's nice to have someone who's a practitioner, really knows this space, who builds other people's personal brands. So it's really nice to have you on the show. So if we're talking about personal branding for you, just for the listeners and kind of people watching, what is personal branding to you as an agency, as somebody who is a professional in this space? What is personal branding?
Yeah, great question to start. So personal branding to me, I think this is really important to know. Personal branding is not crafting or forging an image or perception of yourself as something you're not. I think it's really important to say. It's not kind of the influencer kind of thing we used to see on Instagram, where a lot of it is faked. It's taking the experience and expertise you do have and presenting it in the best way possible to improve your reputation, improve your visibility, and ultimately, another important part, grow your business, generate new business from it. It should be practical. Personal branding really is just another marketing strategy and should be practical, yeah.
I love that, because that's where definitely me and you align. I don't think that it should be. Personal branding should be designed. I would say it should be fun, but it should be profitable and sustainable. I think that's the main thing. I want to ask you a question on this one then. What's your thoughts on the term authenticity or authentic when it aligns with, no, we'll find out, with the term when it aligns with personal branding? How important, and or is it even the reason why I ask? But I won't. No, you let you answer your question, then I won't.
Yeah, I think it's a nice concept, and obviously one we should all aspire to. But the issue I have with it is that it's been kind of overused so much that all the people speaking about authenticity weren't really being that authentic speaking about it. So I think, yes, be authentic, don't fake your personal brand, etc. But trying to strive for authenticity, kind of by definition, isn't that authentic.
I love that. That's very true. You see, the reason why I asked that question is it's becoming a real pet hate of mine, that term. It's like personal branding bingo, when you're just looking, going, do I see that term, authenticity, authentic? And if you Google the term or look at the definition of personal branding, it's everything you've just said, really. So it's all about authority, positioning, influence, not influencer, but influence. And there's a full definition. I have the definition on my website, which has been taken from a proper definition of it, the traditional official definition. Not once is the term authentic mentioned in that definition. And this is what it's been a big thing of mine. Have you been on Clubhouse yet at all?
I've dabbled in it a little bit, mostly in other people's rooms.
The reason why I ask is that you can't go in there without listening to the word authentic. There's a million social media influencers saying, just be authentic. I'm like, makes me feel sick. It's interesting. I'm glad you said that. Well, I would have pretended I would have been authentic to myself and still told you the truth. But it is good to see that that's where, because I think it's a tool. It needs to be a tool. So what we were speaking about, actually, no, before I go into that, I was just looking on your LinkedIn when I sent you the link to join this. And I saw a really good post from you, actually. I think it was you posted an hour ago. So should be fresh in your brain.
Yeah, another one.
Yeah. And so it's about you saying how you've had an incredible success, both for financial success for your client. They've done an incredible result. And and you'll probably know what resonated with me in it is the metrics that you put up were low. They were low in regards to the vanity metrics. So, and this is one of my favorite parts of our last interview, which is why I'm going down this, was explain the thought behind that post, kind of talk us a little bit about that post before, and then explain how important or not important those metrics are, because that post speaks volumes. Yeah.
So the aim of the post really, and I do this a lot through all of my content, it's kind of a mission I have in most of the things I post, is to draw people away from focusing on platform level hacks. So yes, and don't get me wrong, throughout all of this, engagement has its place, reach has its place, views have their place. They're all important for growing a personal brand. But, and this is the important thing, they are not everything. Having those things alone isn't going to build a strong personal brand, isn't going to generate new business for you. So the aim of kind of a lot of the posts I do, including this one, is kind of draw people's attention away from that and to focus on kind of the foundations, if you like, first. One of my clients, actually, Dennis Yu, you might have known him. He's former Yahoo, built search engines, huge Facebook ad spender. He's got a huge personal brand, and he knows personal branding kind of inside out himself anyway. One of the things he speaks about is goals, content, and targeting. And that's kind of at the strategy level. It's the things that you have in place that they exist around your personal brand, regardless of the platform. It doesn't matter if you're on LinkedIn or Instagram. You still have the same goals. You still have the same target audience, and your content is still designed to do one thing: generate business. So I think it's just drawing people's attention to the fact that you've got to focus on those strategy level concepts before you start getting carried away with all the platform level specifics, like, how can I boost my engagement with a LinkedIn pod in the first 10 minutes, for example, which isn't as important. Because do you know what happened in 3, 4, 5 years time? We probably won't be using LinkedIn. You know, if you're relying on platform level hacks, then you're at the whim of algorithms and LinkedIn's terrible customer service team, basically.
I like that. We won't go into that. Don't worry. That's off air stuff. I love this is something I can imagine that a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today will be around this, because you are so clear. That was one thing that came out of the first time we spoke in our interview. The first time was how clear you are on this point and how articulately you put it. And it resonated with me. And in fact, it's probably one of my most clipped bits. I literally post it all the time because it always does well, or it resonates with me. So then I post it out. Is that you were saying about how when we first spoke ages ago, that actually understanding what you're trying to get from it. You're like, actually, if you post and it's got 100, 200, 300 likes and it's doing really well, but you're getting no business from it, then there's no point. Because actually, if you posted and it got 2 likes, but you got 1 client, that's a successful post. And it changed when I had that chat with you. As much as I was knowing that stuff, it really changed the way you put it. Really changed the way I thought about it. Changed the way I thought about everything. Because I then went back to the root cause of my own content and went, okay, what do I want? And actually, from a value ladder perspective, go, okay, what actually is the goal of this bit of content? What am I actually trying to achieve? Am I trying to achieve, with LinkedIn, for example, don't put links in the content, but actually, if they're not going onto my masterclass, there's no point in even posting the piece of content.
Sure.
So all of that hacks and things, they're actually getting in the way. And I hadn't thought about that because you can get so caught up, especially if you look on the platforms. So it's a very powerful message, and one that not many people talk about, one that because it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, it's real. And it's like, there's tons of people there's lots of people. There's a guy that was saying that these big influencers who've got millions of followers and subscribers, a lot of them aren't making any money.
Yeah.
Because they haven't monetized it properly. So from a strategy point of view, and there's another thing I want to bring up in a minute with you, but from a strategy point of view, what would you say is a good strategy for someone if they're starting out their personal brand, they are a business? So let's keep this as my niche is coaches, consultants, freelancers. So let's keep it very much a business-based personal brand. If we're starting talking like streamers and YouTubers, then that all goes out the window. But like for a consultant or a coach or someone who is trading their name on their name for business, what would be a good, in your very much expert opinion, a good strategy for them to go after from now, like from day one?
Yeah. So first thing, obviously identify what you actually want to achieve with it. What are your goals? Ultimately, the end goal is obviously going to be to generate business, but think about the kind of other things that will support that. What do you want people to think when they see you? How do you want people to feel when they read your content? What impact do you want to have on people? Because all of these things will feed into basically getting them to convert at the end of the day. So focus on those things right at the start. Make sure you're really clear on that, because when you've got that as an end destination, you can basically use that to inform everything else you do with your personal brand. You use it to inform your content. You use it to inform who you're connecting with, where you're posting, etc. And then you've essentially got to break down your content into steps that are going to achieve that. And if you're running a business and you don't have time to post 10 times a week and do 3 podcasts and a YouTube video and a blog, don't do it, because you'll try it for a week. You might do it for a week. By week 2, you won't have the time. You'll bin it off. You won't get results. You'll think it's not worth it because you're not getting results, and you'll stop completely and get nowhere. And then 2 weeks later, you'll start the cycle again. So you kind of go in 2 steps forward, 1 step back when you do that. So don't necessarily push yourself to do too much straight away. If 3 posts is all you can manage per week, start with that and then build it up. But yeah, I think definitely get your content in place first. Make sure you're producing high quality content and then scale it. Again, numbers have their value. They have their place. You do want to be getting in front of a large audience, but think about the quality of your post first. if you're not kind of improving your reputation, showing that you know something, showing your experience or your expertise, then the post probably isn't going to be doing an awful lot for your personal brand.
I think that's spot on. I completely agree with you that, like, and I've fallen on that treadmill before where I've like gone, you can get yourself caught up, kind of got to get something out.
Yeah.
So you'll throw anything out. I did that before. I've done that a lot. I went when my son was being born in that kind of weird phase. I foolishly believed that weird phase, you know, it's just the worst phase of like, while he, you know, like this kind of 4 weeks before he's born, 4 weeks after he's born, this 8-week window. You're like, I thought I had it all going on, you know, I thought I got it. I was like, this is fine. Like, and then I look back at I deleted all my podcasts because of this, because I was doing daily lives, which I still do now, but from this, it was a load of rubbish. I looked at that content and was like, what the hell is that? Like, it was literally 8 weeks. And I was like, what value? First of all, what value did it add? Now, would it have added value? All of it, anything can add value in the right context. But I was like, why am I talking about that? You know, like, what has that got to do with what I'm doing? And it's interesting. And that's going to probably lead me on to my next question with you which is why we said we're going to do strategy, not platform, is something that realization was so brilliant, because I was like, what not to do? You fail forward 100%. It really highlighted to me, like, we are not social media experts, and it can very quickly, as personal branding, get sucked into the idea of, well, people want to know about social media, so I'm going to talk to you about social media. And actually, as you know, it's psychology based. It's psychology, social selling. It's about authority building. It's nothing to do with social media. Now, social media is a tool in a toolbox, which is something that I love what you said. They have their place. They're there for an outlet. But it made me, and it was after, and I think it might have been actually clipping your clips, because I was doing a different thing, and I was like, oh, I'm so right. Like, it's what the hell is that? I was talking about COVID. I was talking about the Tesla bottle. I mean, the Tesla bottle was a good idea, but like, not executed correctly. Like, talking about Elon Musk has no relevance to me really and what I do in some way. So what's your take on this as a personal branding expert? How do you find those lines blurring where it's social? People always talk about social. They always think that when this is what you do, what do you define it as? How do you reassess people and say, look, this is not what we do. What we actually do is this whole thing. Do you find that's a common thing that you come up against as a personal brand expert? It's all about social media. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. It's very easy, obviously, to kind of jump on the trends and post what everyone else is posting, because it's generating views, even if it's not kind of in line with your personal brand. There's kind of, you've got to get the lines right. I think there is an element of, you do want to be tapping into the things that people are having a conversation around, because if people already find it interesting, they're probably going to find your angle on that story interesting. Whereas if you're plucking something that you have no data on whether people actually will find it interesting, it's slightly harder to do that. So I think there is kind of an element of needing to be slightly more socially focused, if you like, but you don't want to get caught up in it, if that makes sense. I think that's answered the question.
Yeah, it does. No, it's in a really good way. No, it's just something that I wouldn't normally ask to anyone else, but it's with you. It's something that, like, it's just a real bugbear of mine now. Like, it keeps coming up. I'm like, why do I end up going down this route all the time? Because people ask the question. It's what people want to know. But you can end up being a digital marketing guy as opposed to what you're doing. Me and you were talking off air, talking about strategy, and just to kind of double up on what you were saying a minute ago. You were saying about how, don't commit to something that you're not, if you can't do, or if you're not very good at, or whatever it may be. Now, me and you were chatting, saying that you have discovered, we were talking about your podcast, and then I was talking to you about written posts. What's your take on this in regards to content? Because in regards to that strategy, you seem to have very much doubled down on an area that you like and enjoy and know you're good at. And I'm doing the same with the opposite side. how important is that? How vital is that to someone's personal brand success in the strategy of identifying the type of content that they kind of flourish in? How important is that, and how would you do that with a client?
Yeah, it's huge because it's all about communication. A big thing that I believe in is that the quality of a content comes down to two things: the idea and the delivery. So the idea is kind of things like how critically you're thinking, whether you're coming up with the right topics, etc. If you actually know what you're talking about, the delivery is the thing we're talking about here. So once you've got that idea in place, what is the best possible way you can communicate that to your audience so that it positions you in the right way? So for me, that is obviously text-based. I tend to favor writing copy rather than shooting videos or doing podcasts. For you, that's podcast and video. Because I imagine from your background on stage, you're very good in front of the camera, very good at speaking.
And terrible at writing stuff.
So for you, that is the best possible way you can communicate your ideas as clearly as possible so that your audience understand them. For me, that's text. So it's just about finding what that is for you, and it might take a little bit of experimentation. Certainly did for me. I used to do a fair amount of video to test it. Obviously, I had podcasts as well, which I still do a little bit of here and there. But the majority for me is text, because that is just how I communicate best. So I think play around with a few. Try video, even if you're scared of doing it, because you might flourish when the camera's on. Try text, and whatever you find your audience respond best to, or you feel like you can communicate clearest through, stick to that.
That's a really, really important thing to highlight, because like, to me now, you are Mr. like LinkedIn text guy, you know, like I know you, like, I know your posts are going to be like, I did a poll on LinkedIn saying like about, I really wish text, like, I didn't even say that, but the intention behind it was, I don't put anything polarizing because it gets me in trouble. But I put like, should there be a character limit on LinkedIn like Twitter? You know, it's 200. And I got a lot of people in the comments going, no. And the reason why is, from a very selfish point of view, is when I see people write long posts, because it's purely selfish, because I'm dyslexic, I'm like, I really want to watch it and know what you're talking about, but I'm never going to read it. Like, but I do with yours. And that's something I want to highlight. The reason why I'm saying that is because your personal brand to me is strong as the written guy. I know it's worth my time. That's really weird. And the reason why I'm saying that, though, is because you've stuck to one thing, in my opinion, because you've stuck to one thing, and I know that there's going to be value there. You're probably one of the only people, you and Spencer Lodge are the only two people I will read a text-based post.
Yeah. Because
you've earned that kind of authority as Sam that's not going to be a thing talking about what you had for lunch, which can be a lot of the time with these people. So it's just really interesting to show how when you stick to one thing and do it over and over and over and over again and become known for it, like you've converted someone who would never read anything.
Yeah.
And I will read it. You know, I've read it because I literally asked about your post that I literally posted an hour ago. So it's interesting just to show, like, even from a consumer behavior that it does work.
Yeah.
It does work.
Yeah. There's a few things there. Yeah. I have a similar thing with you where there's certain people. Dan Knowlton springs to mind.
Yeah, I love Dan. He's been on here. Yeah.
Yeah. Dan Knowlton springs to mind with him and Lloyd with their content. As soon as you see the name Dan Knowlton and his profile picture in the feed, before I even have any idea what the content is about, I know I'm watching it. Other people, I might scroll through, it might take the first line to hook me in. But if I just see his name and his photo, I know I'm watching that video. Or Ben
getting ready to laugh.
Yeah.
It's getting ready to laugh, isn't it? Like with Dan's, like you're so right. Like with Dan, I will I'll watch it, and then I'll go when I'm in bed, I'll go to my wife. Oh my God, you want to see this video they've just made? And she's literally looking at me like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, but you're so right. You're so right.
Yeah. And I think he is my favorite personal brand of any personal brand in the world, because of how smart that content is. But that comes from high quality content on repeat for months, years. You know, if he if he was a bit kind of, if he posted a really good video every week, but then kind of littered in 4 or 5 posts with pictures of his lunch or something that I didn't really care about, wouldn't have the same effect. But because his content is so good, the quality is so high, every single time, I know I'm going to consume that. And I'm not his ideal client. I will never buy from him. But pretty much every time he posts, I will comment on it. I will engage with it.
But you're mentioning him. So this is what I've said before. You're mentioning him now in a podcast where other people will have ideal client. Like, this is the value. It's like the 4N, like the BNI stuff of like, it's what happens outside of the room. It's not the people you're speaking to, but it's the people outside of that. I've mentioned, I could do like the bingo thing of Dan Knowlton's name being mentioned on this podcast comes up all the time when someone says to me, what examples would you give as a good one? Every time. I'll never buy from him. Yeah. But me and you are now spending 5 minutes saying how great he is.
We turn into ambassadors for him, right? We're messengers for him, essentially. Yeah. We're carrying his message to people that I have plenty in my network that I imagine would be a great fit for them. And they're seeing me kind of share that post to them pretty much every day.
So that's really interesting, because it's about highlighting that you said about like knowing that if he littered those things in, so it's like that it wouldn't work, that actually, like, if he was on one good post and then a load of rubbishy lunchy ones like workout ones and all of those things we always see. It's interesting because I did this with mine where I'm hand on heart, like I can pump out content at a ridiculous rate because I just know how to do it. Yeah. Is that content good? Actually, I would say now it is. I'd say when I started, there was a big middle bit where you start to believe your own hype, and it was just, I was just pumping any old crap out because I could. Got me in trouble, and that's why I learned about it. But the truth is, when you start to analyze data, and I've very much converted to data, is for me, I don't want you to watch my videos. I have zero desire in anyone watching my videos. There is one thing that I want people to see. Ash Borland is live every single day. That's it. That's all I want. And that, when I did that, I went live for, I went live for about 4 months straight. And my business and my downloads and everything went through the roof. No one's watching that content. They're 10-minute videos every single day. There's no way that people are doing that. Oh, and 2 interviews. So there's like 3 hours of content a week. But people, and I don't want you to watch it, because if you did, because then they're not really successful people. They shouldn't be watching those videos that long. But I noticed that when I committed to one thing, so I became like, you're the text guy. When I became the guy that was just always on, people started to go, I started getting messages. How are you doing it? How can you do it? How do you do it? And the truth was actually very easily, because I'd actually cut away all the other crap. I'd got rid of everything else and just said, I'm going to go live and repurpose it into a blog, into a podcast, and repurpose it into a YouTube video. And I'm not going to do short form content anymore. I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
You become known for that one thing.
Yeah. It creates familiarity. There's actually, I don't know if I mentioned this on the last episode, I might have done, but there's actually a study, and this, one of the very few things I actually remember from my psychology degree, is a study where it was done, it might have been done at Stanford, I'm not sure, it was at university in the States. And they actually took 5 women, I believe it was, and placed them in psychology lectures throughout the course of a semester. Okay. And they placed these women in a different number of lectures. So one of them went to all of them, one of them went to one of them, and then everywhere in between. They didn't do anything at the lectures. They just attended, sat, watched, left, didn't speak to anyone, didn't make an effort with anyone or anything like that. At the end of the semester, they surveyed the students on which face of those 5 women they liked the most, and the order of likability was ranked based on how many lectures they'd attended. So the woman who went to the most lectures was ranked as the most likable. So just from that familiarity and showing up and being in front of people, people start to like you more, start to trust you more, and then listen to the messages. When you do have a message that you need them to hear and they see it, they're actually going to take it on board. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. It's super valuable. And I think that's the hardest thing that people don't realize. I love this, that thing about the key to good design is not about how much you can add, but it's how much you can take away, and it still makes sense.
Yes.
I had Nick Nimmin on the show. I don't know if you know Nick at all, but Nick is a big YouTuber. He's like a massive YouTube coach, and he was saying, like on the show, but he was also saying to me afterwards, is that there's a point. He said you have to find the point of maximum exposure with the minimal amount of effort. He said, and that's the sweet spot. He said, and none of us seem to understand this. He said, we all keep thinking maximum exposure, maximum effort. He was like, but it's not. And he did it with his, which is really interesting, with his YouTube channel, which is coming close to 1 million now subscribers. He's a beast. And he was like, I did a study on myself, and because he said, I will, probably the same with you. You can analyze things till you're blue in the face. And because you know you can do something really well, you'll write an amazing blog, an amazing long blog. But the truth is, how long does that blog need to be? Does it only need to be, I'm doing my hint now, 240 characters? But it is one of those things where he said, he was like, he just kept going. He said, I removed some of the B-roll on the videos. He said, I removed some of the titles. I removed some of the music. And he was like, and I kept seeing, he said, I just watched my analytics over a 6-month period of every week I removed something else. And the video stayed the same, and the video stayed the same, and they stayed the same. He said, and then there was a point where it went down. He said, no, okay, so that's the minimum amount of quality they need to maintain the same amount of exposure. And he was like, and I'm saving myself. It was insane. This guy's, yeah, this is right. He was like, I was editing for like 5 to 6 hours per video. He said, and it actually took me an hour and a half. And he was like, well, how mad is that? And he said, so I can do 3 videos a week. We don't do that. We don't do that enough, I don't think, in regards to what we do.
Definitely. And connected to that actually is distribution. A lot of people will write a blog post, spend hours writing a blog post, and then just leave it on their blog. People think content's king, distribution is king.
Yeah.
You know, I write one blog post. My kind of minimum is I'll write a blog post per week, and I'll basically repurpose that into social content.
Yeah.
So I'm distributing that across LinkedIn, and the purpose is to get people back onto my website and then ultimately convert from there. But it all comes from a minimum of 1 blog post per week. And the rest of the content on my social is just distributing that, essentially.
The best strategy, in my opinion, I call it a 1-2-3 strategy, which is one long form searchable value adding content, 1 piece a week. And then I normally say pick 2 social media platforms to distribute that content. Don't make contextually relevant content for that platform. Just chop up your pieces of content and drive them back. And then the 3 is use paid ads. You know, if you've got the money, once you've established some sort of social proof and you're establishing some sort of organic reach, then throw some fuel on the fire with some paid targeted ads. You're onto a winner. But too many people, you're so right, like will put a video up on YouTube. The best one's podcasting. I mean, if you have a podcast, you'll know this as you've done a podcast before, there is 0 discoverability.
Yeah.
So like if you just make a podcast and then just nobody knows about the podcast and you're waiting for listeners, you'll get a few, but my gosh, you're nowhere near as many as you think. Like you have to distribute.
Yeah. You're wasting your time if you don't, essentially.
100%. The other thing, you know Joe Gannon quite well. I think you know Joe, and Joe came on here, and it's about that. It's that repurposing of content. You know, 1 video, that's all he does. Day in and day out. It's like 1 video can turn into 20, 30 pieces of content.
Yeah. And he's grown his YouTube channel quite quickly
from
that exact strategy. He does it very well.
Yeah, he does. He literally, I interviewed him, and as soon as we got the interview, this is what I mean. It's about being, what's the word, on top of it. He was like, can you send me that video? It's a 40-minute interview. I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, why? And he said, because that's going to be my content for the next 6 weeks. He was like, and I was like, yeah, okay. Because he understands the value of time, isn't it? And that's the same with that. Like, that's what I notice is distribution is king. You're very right. Mate, you just know all your stuff, don't you? So one thing I wanted to ask you, we're kind of moving on to I said about Nick Nimmin. You said like you liked that idea, which he's a genius. One thing that he talks about, and I think I'd like to ask you about this as well, because you're a personal brand coach, consultant, expert, agency, and you also are very much about profitable brands. So you talk about that a lot in your content, which is something I'm a big believer in. Got that from people like Mike Kim and things like that, who it's all about building a business from this. If you're a personal brand, when do you think, I'm trying to think, I can say it in the right way. When do you think is the right time to start to monetize that brand. I'll explain what Nick Nimmin said to me afterwards. His is quite different to what I ever expected. It might be the same with you, though, because you're quite controversial, but it'll be good to see. When do you think is the right time to start monetizing your personal brand?
Do you know what? I don't want this to be seen as a scapegoat answer, because it's not. It's genuinely what I believe. But I think absolutes are rare in this, as they are in marketing. I don't necessarily think there is a right time to monetize your personal brand. Quite frankly, because I've seen people do it successfully both ways. Dave Gerhardt, I believe his name is, I think I've pronounced that correctly, is another one of my favorite examples. He built up his personal brand. I think the first blog post he put out on Medium was 2015 or 2016. He built up his personal brand by sharing blog articles, doing podcasts, doing social posts pretty much every day over the course of 4 or 5 years. In 2020, he decided to monetize that with a £10 or $10 subscription group. People pay $10 a month. They go part of a private group where he's just sharing extra content, bonus content. And he's made upwards of 200,000, multiple six figures from that group in 1 year. Yeah. If he had decided to monetize that from day one, I don't think he would have achieved that. But because he'd waited 4 or 5 years, built up that trust, and then did it, he was literally able to generate six figures from it within a few months, which is quite incredible.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's countless of examples of people that come on LinkedIn, blow up straight away, or any other social platform, to be completely honest, and can monetize their brand straight away. So in all honesty, I don't know if there is an exact time where you go, okay, this is when you want to monetize. You can do it either way.
No, it's interesting. It's a good point. I think that they're two great examples. The reason why I asked that question is he was the very first person I ever heard, and he came on the show and spoke about it, is that his belief is you should monetize the moment you start. So he was like, he said, if you're looking at doing this as a business, he was like, he was talking about YouTube specifically, but I was like, is the same with everything else. He was like, yeah. He was like, if you've made one video, you've monetized one video too late. And I was like, wow, really? And he was like, yeah. He said, because as your brand swells and grows, so will the monetization of the brand. He said, so but now what he was saying though is effectively building things like membership sites and courses. He said, if you do them at the beginning, they will grow as your popularity grows. He said it, and he was like, I've seen too many, which is the first time I've ever heard someone say this before. That was why I was like, whoa, because it's normally build an audience. He was saying, he said, I've seen too many people whose videos blew up overnight on YouTube, because it's mainly YouTube. But he was like, I've seen it happen on YouTube where they've gone from zero, they've been uploading for 2, 3, 4 years, and then all of a sudden they do that one video that does boom, and all of a sudden they're really successful, and they haven't got the infrastructure in place to capture that attention. Because so like your guy there that's 6 figures or multiple 6 figures, he's multiple 6 figures, but how many of those £10 a month would he have been missing for 4 years? How many of those people may have paid? And that's why, and I never thought about it that way until he came on the show, because I've always been like, you wait till the audience is gagging for it, and then you give it to them. But like, he was like, it'll swell with it, and you'll grow with it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I do quite like that approach.
Pretend it's yours now, mate. You can go away and say that's your idea.
There is something though about there's a trust builder in giving information away and not asking anything back. I think that builds a level of trust that you can't necessarily build any other way.
But
there's
a real reciprocity, isn't it? It's a real reciprocity builder. Like there's nothing there, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
So I don't disagree. I think either way will work.
Awesome, mate. No, that's brilliant. So before we go, we've got one final question for you, which is my final question for everybody. And you've done it before, so let's see if they're the same again. What are your 3 tips for beginners, people starting in their personal brand right now? What would be your 3 tips for them?
Interesting. This might have changed actually since the last one.
Probably has. It should do. Normally you got better by now.
Yeah, you don't. Tip 1, establish a clear goal from day dot. If you're building a personal brand without a goal, you're probably walking aimlessly. Second one, focus on the strategy level before the platform level, which we obviously spoke about earlier in the episode. And the final one, keep it practical. If it's not growing your audience, your brand, or your bank balance, don't bother with it.
That last one was the same as last time. Very clear. There's a very clear and consistent message running through. It took months and it's still the same. Sam, mate, that's been amazing. It's been amazing having you on, buddy. If people want to connect with you, they want to work with you, for example, where can they go?
Yeah, so I'm frequently active on LinkedIn. You can also find us at brandleypersonalbranding.com or samwinsbury.co.uk. I share content every week on my personal website.
Got rid of that personal branding guy?
Yes, I did. Gave it an update. That was just because of the move out of consulting to Done For You.
That makes sense. No, it's good. That's one thing I remember. See, there you go. You do so many good things. I remember it. That personal branding guy.
I appreciate that.
Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll run the outro out now.